It drives me nuts that he's not up there with those guys.
The 1000th episode of The Fighter and the Kid was a special one. They couldn't get a guest to show up in person, which was a little sad. They answered questions about Brian's cancellation, the Bobby Lee drama. Brendan brought up his lawsuit, basically all the bad stuff that's happened to them in recent years. And also, Brendan showed that he's still delusional about his comedy career. But I first want to talk about the most noteworthy part, which was the cancellation question that came in for Brian Callen. In 2020, Callen had an article written about him, accusing him of the R word. It was a tough time for Callen, but if the story is true, then it was definitely a tougher time for the victim. Now let's see how Brian answers it.
What do you think the most important thing you learned while the man dragon was dealing with BS canceling?
You take it because you went through it, and then I went through it. Like we both went through some shit there. Different because you actually went through the actual bullshit, and then you gotta realize I basically going through it with my brother, because we're in this marriage, so it was like a double-sided thing. You go first though.
Well, I mean,
your thing.
Part of it's losing everything, like part of it's just going through, like you spend your whole life building something, and then just out of the blue, somebody says something about you, tells a story about you. Doesn't matter if it's from 1999, doesn't matter what it is.
Doesn't matter if it's true.
Your whole life.
That's most important.
Away.
Doesn't matter if it's true.
Yeah, I mean,
First of all, I don't know why Brendan would open his mouth. I guess he just had to quickly let everyone know that someone else's cancellation also affected him. Now back to Brian's answer. I don't know about you guys, but I thought it was weird that Brian would emphasize that the story allegedly took place in 1999. If someone accused me of something from 20 plus years ago and it wasn't true, I wouldn't rant about it later on saying, yeah, they brought up this thing from 20 years ago. The most important part is that it's not true. That's what he should have been focused on. Who cares if it was 25 years ago or yesterday? What was described in the article that came out against Brian was bad. If you notice, Brendan actually saves Brian jumping in and emphasizing that not only was it a long time ago, but it was most importantly false.
Doesn't matter if it's from 1999, doesn't matter what it is.
Doesn't matter if it's true.
Your whole life.
That's most important.
Away.
Doesn't matter if it's true.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
But moving on to more highlights. Next up, we have Brendan's rant about how Brian Callen was wronged by the comedy community after he was cancelled. Brendan stuck up for Brian, and because of that, he claimed that he no longer got booked for certain clubs.
Oh, well, Brendan not only defends them, but brings them on the show, does a show with them. Like, so it ostracized me from certain comedy clubs. And, I'm like, wait, what? Wait, you're not sending me availables now? I didn't do anything. But you did. You're on that team. We're on this team. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
And all that, I'd go, okay. And you want to outcast him over some bullshit? That's what upsets me. So what makes me proud, and not mad, I'm trying to get mad, what makes me proud is he's not going to lash out about it. Brian's cool. Brian goes to work. Brian's doing the road. Brian's trying to sell tickets. But I'll tell you right now, I don't forget. That shit's not cool with me. That's why you don't see me at those places.
As if we, the audience, have no idea that he has two of the worst rated comedy specials of all time, and because of that had been struggling to sell tickets. This podcast can really be entertaining for the wrong reasons, because you get to see one guy being delusional while the other guy just sits there and nods. Now moving on, we have Brendan saying he backs his friends no matter what.
Again, and I hope I have friends like this in my life. If shit goes down, if I'm your real friend, there's people that we're business associates or whatever, we work together, or we have a brand together, that's different. There's a few handful of friends where I don't give a what you're going through. I'm the guy you call. And I take pride in that.
This is kind of funny because Callen had to stay quiet during this, which I have to give him credit for because deep down he knows he's not that guy. When the stories came out against Chris D'Elia, Brian addressed it on the podcast and sort of threw D'Elia under the bus.
what's important to say, we haven't spoken to Chris.
No.
And we've never been on the road with him. I was on the road with him about 14 years ago once. When he was, just beginning, but I've never been on the road with him, so I don't know.
So Brian decides to lie and say he's never been on tour with D'Elia in order to put some distance between them, and then admits that he actually had been on tour with him. I get he's in a tough spot because it's his friend, but instead of just saying, hey, we don't know the facts, so I'm not going to comment on it, or just staying absolutely silent like Rogan did with Callen's cancellation, he instead brings it up on the pod and tries to make out like they're barely friends. Then scrubs his Instagram of any pictures of him and D'Elia. And now Brian is still trying to put distance between them. Brendan kept referring to both Callen and D'Elia when talking about both of them being cancelled, and Brian did not like it. After the third or fourth time, Brian had to step in and get him to stop mentioning him in the same vein as Chris D'Elia.
Here's my thing.
happened wrong.
I can understand why some of them didn't speak up for Brian and Chris. I get it. I get it because you're scared.
Brian and Chris are two different things too.
No, I'm saying that whole cancel thing. It's one thing.
We're all
yeah.
all of us are in our different boats.
But still, you guys were voted off the island.
I guess once you've been accused of something like this, the last thing you want to have is your name mentioned alongside someone who's accused of dating underage girls, and vice versa for Chris D'Elia. I know Brendan was clearly just talking about both of them being cancelled, but Brian just couldn't stomach being named next to D'Elia, and I don't blame him.
I think
That
that's
one was a bad choice.
that's my biggest regret. I was defending my friend Brendan. I wasn't working on all the information, and I don't know. I could get into what it was. I was going through some really crazy shit.
They eventually talk about the Bobby Lee drama, where Brian physically threatened him and Brendan threatened to release evidence of illegal activity from someone at Tiger Belly, which he most likely made up to save face. They came out looking pretty pathetic, and both have been apologetic about it, and here Brendan tried to take some accountability in his own unique way.
And I'll take accountability too. Like Brian said, we're going through a lot. It's like that whole time was so weird. Like now I'm in a much better place, much healthier. I don't have the wrong people around me. Like when that was going on, like if that same opportunity came to me now, someone pitched, I'd be like, are you out of your fucking no? And at that time, again, I take full accountability because remember, I have a whole team, right? You have business managers, you have this entertainment manager, you got lawyer, you got this. I have a whole bunch of people working for me at the time. I've never been the guy to give people like, you can control this. Never. It's not my thing. That's why I'm at where I'm at. But somewhere along the line, I lost my way. I started delegating certain things to people. I control it. My social media, your boy's back. I've been back about a year now. I run everything. Everything you see is me. Everything you see now is my decision. Notice how much better it is. How much more positive I am. I'm a positive person.
So did you get that? The people around Brendan caused him to make bad decisions. Since he's now running everything, none of that stuff would happen again. That's him taking accountability. But one of my favorite parts is when he tries to help Brian out with his excuse by saying it could have been anyone, including Rogan, that got shouted at.
I made it worse by far by pointing my gun at somebody I care about that didn't deserve it.
But to your defense, that could have been Bobby. That could have been Rogan. That could have been Bert Kreischer. It was just at that moment.
On that day, I was going
and
crazy.
It just so happened
I was
you
going
took your
through
anger on
something.
Bobby.
Well,
Yes.
As if in a million years, either of these two would talk to Rogan the way they spoke to Bobby. This is just another example of these two feeding off of each other's bullshit. We know why he thought he could bully Bobby, and it backfired.
I will challenge anyone, any comic, to go on stage after Callen. I challenge any of those comics. I don't give a fuck if it's the Comedy Store, Zanies, wherever they're at. And you're telling me Brian's not better than 99% of those fucking comics. It drives me nuts that he's not up there with those guys. He's better than fucking 99% of them.
I think all this talk about Brian's cancellation and the Bobby Lee drama and why he's apparently not welcome at certain comedy clubs made Brendan emotional. It's kind of sad because they wanted to answer all of these fan questions and this is the stuff that came up, which just highlights what a shit show it's been for them in recent years. They've had such a fall from grace, especially Brendan, who was practically handed a comedy career. And when there was no denying that he wasn't cut out for it, he made excuse after excuse why he had to stop. We've heard the one about him spreading himself too thin.
Again, part of the reason I'm off the road, you're not seeing as many fight companions. You don't see food truck anymore. You don't see a lot of the fight stuff I was doing because I was spread too thin. So when you do so many shows, I can't focus on Firing the Kid, the Golden Hour, and then this new truck giveaway stuff I'm doing. Like I can't do the road. I can't give you the good quality podcast. I can't do the car stuff I want to do and be a dad and be a coach and be a good husband. I can't do it. Yeah. So something has to give. If that means making less money and not doing the road, sign me up.
And now he uses Brian's cancellation as part of the reason why clubs won't book him. Man, I hope Brian really appreciates that Brendan ruined his flourishing comedy career so that he could help Ryan. What a sacrifice. His problem is that he's just such a good friend. This is what he tells himself. He still doesn't get, after all this time, that if he just admits that he was never cut out for stand-up, we could respect that. It's perfectly fine to try something and fail at it. When his first comedy special dropped, he was marketed as this renaissance man that played football, MMA fighter, podcast host, and now comedian, a guy that essentially could do it all. So failure was never on the cards, and even when he was failing at stand-up, he had to put a different spin on it. This is what deep insecurity looks like. And it's funny, but sad at the same time. If you enjoyed this, hit the like and subscribe, and let me know what you think in the comments. Thanks for watching.